men together.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it's just this whole, and we've done a few podcasts on it, but like toxic masculinity, the term that gets thrown around, and it just drives me up a fucking wall. Like, just the things that they're labeling as toxic. And I'm like, that's just like being a man. Like, so basically everything about being a man is toxic. Like, that's the part that drives me crazy.
Well, I would even challenge you to say that they label those things toxic, but that's not what they're talking about. They're actually talking about all the things that make men look like women. And not look like, but act like. The most dangerous thing in the world is a weak man, because he won't ever come at you face to face. You turn around, then he comes after you. It's the guy in grade school that would tell the teacher rather than confront you.
Right.
You know, and not that that's a bad thing. If
there's a time and a place, I mean, there's a
but
reason.
Sometimes you walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, stop," and you just accept the consequences, whether it's you get your tail kicked or whatever. But Jordan Peterson always says, a good man, a good dangerous man under voluntary control is the best man. You know, so know how to put somebody down, know how to do the thing, be able to do the thing, and not want to do.
Right, because I know a lot of some of the most badass dudes I know are the most gentle, kind-hearted, sweetest people you'll ever meet. But if you were,
Look at Trevor.
Under the right,
super soft spot. Kyle,
under the right circumstances, two of them. Literally, that's exactly who I'm thinking of. Like two of my two jiu-jitsu coaches, they are like the nicest, most helping, giving people you'll ever meet. But like they've kicked my ass hundreds of times. They throw me around, they ragdoll me around that mat like it's like I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, and we were talking earlier off air, but that's a technique thing, probably.
Oh,
no,
yeah,
absolutely.
100%. Doing it for 25 years,
Mm-hmm.
like
and just being able to, and
they know what I'm going to do, but long before I'm going to, they're 6 steps ahead of me in the chess game,
Exactly.
Like, there's no, maybe one day I'll be able to catch up, but I got a lot of learning to do.
They'll slow down.
Yeah.
it's unfortunately it's what happens.
Yeah. That's Kyle said something the other day. It was just like, he's like, I love seeing you guys get better until I have to roll with you, It's like, he said something like that. He's like, yeah, I love watching you guys improve until I have to roll with you. And, and I have to, you guys are, catching me on stuff and, it's cool to see. And, so, you're a martial artist as well.
Most, before I was, in the Army, it was just martial arts by experience. I guess. I fought a lot as a kid. Again, just a youth, misspent youth. Spent a lot of times getting punched in the face or punching somebody else in the face. But that's what boys did back then. I mean, some of my best friends in the world are people that I got in fights with.
Yeah.
You don't see that anymore.
No, you don't.
No, because people can't lose a fight. There is no natural pecking order, because pecking order now comes from who's liked by somebody else.
Right.
Like if the teacher believes you over this person, then you're, or I don't get it. Like I watched my son grow up and I was trying to help him, and he was specifically told, you're not allowed to defend yourself. Like those words were said by teachers. I'm like, I will defend you 100% with anybody. If somebody tries to do something to you and you stop them, 100% okay with me, no matter what.
Yeah,
I will help you with that consequence.
I got into that. Shouldn't say I got into it, but my ex-wife and I have a disagreement on that, because there is a kid, and my oldest son was a couple of years ago, and this kid spit on my son. Yeah,
that's an act of aggression,
and so Connor didn't do anything, didn't tell anybody, didn't say anything to the teacher, but he came home and he was really upset, and I started talking to him, and he told me, and so I called the school, like, hey, this happened. Was anything reported on this? Like, you guys are supposed to report any incidents and things like that. No one said anything to me. And they're like, well, no, we didn't know about it. I said, okay, well, now you do. So here's your opportunity to do something. Because I taught my boys, I said, listen, first time, go ahead, tell your teachers. Second time, confront the kid, say, don't do it again. And if he does it again, then you have every right to punch him in the face. And they're 4 and 5 years old.
Right.
My ex-wife was not pleased at me telling them that.
Well, if it goes into anything in life, if you if you allow people to take advantage of
They're
you,
going to.
they're going to, especially since we don't have that citizens contract we had 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Ever since I've been alive, whether it's my generation's fault or not, the citizens contract is over. We don't,
What do you mean by citizens contract?
most people don't believe you should just be a good person. Follow the rules because the rules allow for a easier society here, right? Mow your lawn.
Yeah.
Because mowing your lawn makes your house look good and makes your neighbors like you because they don't have to be your best friend.
House, yeah.
But now every house is looking good, right? And, HOAs weren't a thing because you didn't need them.
Yeah.
Now you need, the more rules you have, the less morals you have. And that
makes
so,
sense.
Yeah.
So I'd rather
I
have
never
a
thought about it like
moral
that.
society than a rules-based society. I don't need laws to tell me not to hurt you.
Right.
I'm just not going to hurt you. But if you hurt my kid, I'm going to hurt you.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Well, and that's
So
that was the thing. It was like my ex-wife was like, Pat, they're 4 and 5. They don't know any better. I'm like, yeah, but that comes from somewhere. And and if this kid's not going to get punished for it, something needs to happen about it. And so I was like, fine, if they do it again and you want them to handle it this way, then I'll go after the parents. I don't give a shit. That's how it's going to be. Like, you don't have to fuck with my kid. Your son's not going to spit on my son and continue to spit on my son without any repercussions.
right.
If my son can't defend himself, then I'm going to defend him. I'm going to defend for him. And that means, obviously, I'm not going to go after this little kid, but I'm going to go after the parents for basically being shitty parents and not telling their son and reprimanding their son on not spitting on people.
Right.
And so I don't know. I think that's probably why we're not married, but hey, we see differently and all that. And she's like, Pat, when they get a little bit older, that's fine. If that's what you want to teach them, but right now they're 4 and 5, then they don't need to know that. And I said, I kind of disagree with you on that, but
I firmly believe that you should learn restraint, but you
Right.
have to be able to be restrained from something.
Sure.
well, I mean, it's like my whole thing was like, you're giving this kid 3 opportunities. You told the teacher the first time, comes back and does it again. You confronted the kid yourself. And if he does it a third time, that's just blatant disrespect and like doesn't care.
3 strikes, you're out.
Right. It's baseball. Hey, but that's the thing too, though. Like if you talk to anybody, so like I remember, so like I did Krav Maga for a hot minute when I was still playing baseball. And one of the things they mentioned was like rule of law, when we were talking about laws, was if someone attempts to hurt you or harm you 3 times, at that point, you can legally do whatever you want because it's considered self-defense. They get 3 attempts, or maybe it was even when I was taking my conceal and carry class, they were saying something that somebody can attempt to hurt you 3 times, and then you can legally defend yourself in whatever form you want. And you could literally kill somebody, but that because they attempted and took 3 swings on you, or whatever, that would now. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's what they were telling us at the time. And I'm like, I need to look into that some more and find out for sure. But that's how I know how I've lived my life. If someone's going to do something 3 times without any, then yeah, I'm going to do what I need to do to defend myself.
Yeah.
So
that's due to the nature of the things I've done in my life. I tend to have a lot of police officers as friends. And they go by their use of force model, which is they can go 1 up. So if you have hands, they can pull out the nightstick unless they're 5 foot and you're 7'4".
Right.
Then they're just pulling out their gun because they can't stop you with a nightstick. Right. So it's really just meet force with force and go 1 up is how I would do it. So if you were coming at me, I'm like 15 years younger than me and a stud. Yeah, I'm probably going to shoot you. I'll deal with
I'll
the
take
12.
that as a compliment.
I'll deal with the 12 at the jury. But the great thing about that is most martial artists would never do that.
Right.
Like that's the thing I love about martial arts is, whether it be pistols or rifles and, militaristic martial arts, or it's BJJ or Aikido. And, people that are truly dangerous, they don't want to fight.
They don't want to fight.
Because that takes
they have nothing to prove.
That takes a really big toll on your soul to do bad things to people.
Yeah, and then there's also that piece of if you are a martial art, you realize really quickly that you're not the toughest guy out there.
Right.
Like that's you'll figure that out in your first 20 minutes of jiu-jitsu. That like, hey, you're not as tough as you think you are. Like,
Right.
I think the average man just has a very inflated
Ego.
and inflated idea of what they're capable of until they get out there with someone who actually knows what they're doing and experiences that for themselves, and they realize, oh, okay, maybe I'm not as tough as I think I am just because I watched the UFC, or I was in a street fight in high school once, or, I got into a bar fight in college and I knocked that guy out, because he wasn't even looking, or whatever it was.
I remember going to a bar. Used to watch UFC at the bar because it was pay-per-view. It was like $100.
Sure.
You're like, we'll just go to the bar and spend 50 and
Right.
on beers. Yeah.
yeah. And you'd hear people telling the guy what to do. And I'm like, been in martial arts for however long at that time. And I'm like, yeah, he's trying to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just look at him.
Right.
Yeah. Do you know how hard it is when someone's trying to stop you? Like,
And the other guy gets a vote too. And one of the biggest things I always learned in the military is the enemy gets a vote. And I'm a historian. Like, I love history. So I've read a lot of generals and everything, no matter your plan or not, the enemy gets a vote in what you do. So if you're not accounting for their vote, you're probably going to fail in your plan. And so that's the same thing with fighting one-on-one. It's the same thing with fighting. And Aikido is, we eventually trained to deal with many more than one attacker at a time. And so the goal is not to be obviously taken down, especially because if one guy gets you down, the other two are just going to pile on,
right?
Or the other 3 or 5 or whatever it is. And so,
for those that don't know, what is Aikido?
Aikido is Japanese martial art. It's it's considered a new martial art, like BJJ. It's new, but it's based on jujitsu and Aiki jujitsu and Daito-ryu and ancient or older martial arts that had a lot of breaks and really hard styles. And Aikido has been not sportified because there is no competition necessarily, but it has been, we'll say, the edges have been rounded off a lot to make it a more fluid martial art. It's considered a soft style, not a lot of hard blocks. Blend with rather than force on force. So I almost, there's a couple martial artists that you would know, one being Steven Seagal. He was a big Aikido guy, but he had 10 years of karate prior. And the reason Aikido wasn't based around competition was because you had to be a black belt to walk into an Aikido dojo. It's some other form of martial arts. So you had to be a judo black belt and recommended from your instructor to go see O-sensei.
Really?
Yeah. So originally you knew how to fight before you walked in an Aikido dojo.
Oh.
Now, if we had the luxury of talking to some of the original students of O-sensei, and some of it's written down, but it's more passed down oral tradition, that they used to go out to the bars and every day, and they were uchideshi, so they lived in the dojo, and so they would train 8 hours a day, and then what do young men want to do? Drink and get women, right?
Yeah.
So they would go to the bar and fight over women, and then again, this is a story of a story, but they would come back and they would be, whatever, or they'd get called from jail, and O-sensei would go get them, and he'd say, "But did you win? Like, you shouldn't be doing this at all.
Mm-hmm.
This is not what we do, but did you win?"
Yeah.
Like, same thing your dad would say. It's like, you're not supposed to fight for no reason.
But how'd you do
Right.
it?
But did you win?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it may have lost some of that effect over time. And I train with, in the style in which I train, we train more martially than average, so to speak. Like, we're not going into it with traditional necessarily attacks. We start there, like the overhead strikes and things like that. But people don't leave their fist hanging out there.
No.
People box,
Yeah.
especially in the West. You're not punching and waiting for somebody to grab your wrist. You're punching
and bring it back to your chin.
And
if you're
probably comboing, right?
Sure,
Jab, cross, 1, 2, 3s.
Right.
All the boxing that the average person or the average fighting person knows, which was blown away just due to my upbringing. Everybody I knew fought,
Mm-hmm.
but my son's whole generation, they never fought because they were told violence, you get kicked out no matter what. Like, how are you going to have a military with kids that have never rolled around with each other?
Right.
And
I realize you're not made of glass.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at right now. That's
Yeah,
a whole nother topic.
There was a few fight nights that we had in high school where we were out of the garage and boxing gloves came out.
Yep, that's what we did. We did that a handful of times. I was in a handful of stupid high school party fights,
Yep.
stuff like that. And
We would go out in the desert. So I grew up in Arizona, my high school time, and we'd go to the desert and they would clear out a spot. If you had a beef during the week, Friday night.
yeah, we had an alley right down the street from my high school. It was called the Wynn Alley because this guy, his last name Michael Wynn. He had like this crazy KO one time, like really fucking flatline this kid, and so then we just referred to it as Wynn Alley from then on.
Wow.
It was well, he had like it was like a guy that had been training martial arts versus somebody who thought they were a tough guy, and it was just he just stepped right into a hook and KO'd him clean. I mean, but man, it's just so dangerous on concrete. I mean, especially on, I mean, it's dangerous in general to be fighting, but like you look at all those times where, you know, saw a lot of fights in high school, but like, and thankfully, like there was never any like serious injury that resulted from them. But like, you know, like you flatline someone and they bounce their head off the concrete. I mean, serious things can happen, you know, like.
Actually, not funny, but story about that is I got to my second training duty station at Fort Lee, Virginia. And, the day we got there, somebody had been killed by basically an uppercut, a blindsided uppercut, hit him and he hit his head on the ground and lived about 3 more weeks and then died. It was bad. The guy went to prison. He's still in prison. He's in Big Rocks into Little Rocks, Big Rocks to Little Rocks prison.
Yeah, think about that. If you're ever going to get into a fight, you know, you just never know what can happen. You know, you're rolling the dice because it's. I mean, you don't know, especially when you're in a bar on the street, or you know, there's a curb there. Like there's all these things. There's all these factors that are you're not going to when you punch somebody in the face, you don't expect that they're going to die. But that's certainly a possibility.
That is a possibility. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like it's
Especially if you catch them right, get them in the temple, something like
fall and bounce their head off the curb or whatever it is.
It just goes back to showing the importance of being able to know how to defend yourself.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the fighting today, though, goes to the ground pretty quickly. So
not if you're fighting me. I don't want to be on the ground with either of you two guys. You're big and you know how to do it.
Yeah.
All my friends were wrestlers, so
Yeah.
I learned to wrestle a little bit. They would try to wrestle me. I'm like, dude, I'm 50 pounds heavier than you. I'm going to win.
Yeah.
They're like, no, you won't. Ball them up, and they're like, oh. Yeah, strength and size does matter.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It does, for sure.
That's
100%.
why martial arts and
That's why
learning
weight
how
classes.
to fight.
No.
Well, but that's also learning how to fight against anybody.
Yeah.
And tall people, short people. That's why I love Aikido so much is we don't have weight classes. Fight against new people, people that have been there forever, and it all happens.
So is there sparring in Aikido?
Not technically, but yeah.
Okay.
We just we would call it freestyle, or randori is take on more than one attacker, and they're coming at you from any different angle or whatever. So yeah, not technically sparring because we don't take it past really, getting crushed, but you may get barreled into the wall.
Okay.
So
because even like that's why I like jujitsu. I mean, it was as hard as it was, and as how often I got my ass kicked. Like I didn't feel, other than that one time where that guy started manipulating my wrist, and I felt like I fucked my elbow up. Other than that, like, I mean, I got arm barred, I got choked out, like all the things. Like I didn't feel like I was ever really in danger. Especially when you're rolling with people that know what the fuck they're doing.
Well, and you got to trust the guy you're
right,
with.
exactly. And so I mean that's the thing, and that's what I like about the gym that we go to. That it's they keep in the beginning beginners classes that teach you the fundamentals, and then I had to bump up just because my schedule. They let me go into the fundamentals classes where I'm 3 weeks in and I'm rolling with blue belts, brown belts, black belts, and it was eye opening. I mean. Yeah, I mean, I was getting my ass kicked by Zach and guys of his size, and I'm just like, wait, I'm 6'3", what the fuck is going on here?